Hello to all my dear Manhwa lovers. I hope you're doing well. First of all, I want to thank you for all your comments and, of course, a special shout out to Gregory Issa John 1832, who was the first to comment on the penultimate video. Thank you for being the very first. Now let's get started with the video. Hyun didn't know what to say, but took the chance to ask if they could pray again. Before he could say anything more, Junah punched him in the stomach because she knew exactly what his intentions were. She knew him well and had expected him to try that move right away. Hyun tried to clarify that it wasn't what she thought, but Junah didn't believe him and wanted to know the real reason he was there. With no other choice, Hyun confessed that his initial purpose was to befriend his beloved Junah. When Yeon-yi mentioned it would be fun, he took it seriously. He had always been someone who valued the relationships he had, and the idea of "it'll be fun" fascinated him. He had high expectations about building a genuine connection. However, Jun knew he couldn't directly tell Junah that he was in the club just to make friends. Even so, the blonde kept pressing him for more answers. She asked if he truly just wanted to pray with her now that they were closer, but it seemed she didn't care much about his reason. She knew that Yeon-yi had brought him there because she saw something in him. After all, it was rare for someone to join the club without a solid reason. That's why Junah challenged him to prove how much he could contribute to the team. Hyun confidently assured her that he wouldn't just bring them closer to victory, he'd lead them to win. But Jun questioned his words, since it was easy to say such things. She wanted to know how he'd achieve that, especially since she herself had nearly beaten him in a match. It was then that Hyun revealed he had been a trainee for the JKT team, leaving Jun in shock. To prove he wasn't lying, he showed her a picture from the induction ceremony 2 years ago, where he was featured. Seeing the photo left Junah speechless. Although Hyun admitted he had to leave for personal reasons, he assured her that he could dominate any local competition with his skills. His highest rank last season was 8th place in Challenger. Hyun excelled at strategy analysis, feedback loops, map reading, positioning, and item management, all part of his arsenal. After sharing his story, he asked if she still doubted his skills, as he could be the team's greatest asset. Junah, though impressed, didn't admit it out loud. Still, she acknowledged that he wasn't as bad as she had initially thought, and asked him what he really wanted. Hyun said nothing, but his expression betrayed him, and Junah knew he only wanted to pray with her. When she saw his face, she scolded him for being so obvious and asked if he thought she was that easy. Hyun quickly denied it, knowing it wasn't true, especially since he remembered what she had told him that day. Junah admitted she actually liked praying with him. Hyun, recalling that his first experience with religion had been with her at 21, asked if it hadn't been a bad thing. This made Junah blush even more, but she quickly brushed it off, saying she was just messing with him. When Hyun suggested exchanging phone numbers, Junah, flustered, shouted that she would call him any time she wanted to go to Mass. Hyun then began to understand the situation better. Though he felt increasingly attracted to her, every minute spent with Junah made her seem even more beautiful. She noticed his gaze, and the atmosphere grew tense. They were about to kiss, but Junah stopped him, asking him to wait. She wanted it to be the last time and, in exchange, asked him to work hard in the club as if he were her servant. She said they would only pray again because it was with him, and it wouldn't happen again. Hyun agreed. Then they got ready to pray comfortably. Hyun was a little embarrassed, but didn't understand how Jun could hide the chalice so well. Jun proudly explained that the chalice didn't shine when it was still. Junah began cleaning it with a technique she had seen in a Russian tutorial. It was her first time trying it, and she found it fun since very few people knew about this cleaning method. Meanwhile, Jun was reflecting on how different Junah was during Mass compared to her usual demeanor. As Junah continued cleaning, she admired the shine of the chalice and especially its weight. Although Hyun found it a bit odd, for Jun it was perfectly normal. However, Jun noticed that Junah's cleaning techniques were quite different from what he was used to. In his mind, he knew that at any moment he might need to fetch holy water, as Junah's new technique was proving effective. When he mentioned this to her, she told him to act like a man and stay still. She also reminded him that this would be his last Mass, and that she would now guide him to know God, removing all sin from his heart. Despite this, Jun was completely blushing from the situation, which led Junah to tease him about his expression. She wanted to take a picture to save the moment, but Jun asked her to wait, saying that if she kept cleaning the chalice, he'd have to go fetch the holy water. This left Junah speechless, but she added that it was fine since she would examine him for all his sins. For Jun, in his thoughts, this made her look even cuter. However, Junah, flustered, asked him to stop making that silly face and to go get the holy water. Jun, for his part, suggested changing locations because he wanted to try something else. The joke was that Jun wanted to eat a danonino before continuing. He was determined to leave everything as clean as the chalice, especially since Junah had helped him with it. Of course, the Danonino was melting a bit from being so cold, and June had never been so close to one before praying. Despite this, Hyun was very embarrassed by the situation. Jun, noticing the girl's discomfort, told her how cute she looked, but she just kicked him in the face, saying he was talking nonsense and that all she wanted was for him to eat in silence. Hyun thanked her for the food and began eating the Danonino until it was completely gone. Junah, impressed by what she had just witnessed, accidentally spilled the holy water. June, seeing what had happened, asked if she was okay, but Junah, very embarrassed for spilling so much water, tried to hide her shame. However, she couldn't ignore what had just happened and asked June to read the Bible with her. Although he didn't immediately understand what she meant, when Junah scolded him for not listening and asked him to help her read the Bible, June became nervous but agreed. Just as he was about to read a passage, they heard a noise. The door handle was moving. Clearly, it startled them. Someone was about to enter. The door opened and Somin appeared, talking to Yeonji on the phone because she had forgotten her bag in the club. Noticing the lights on and seeing Junah and Jun together, she became embarrassed by the situation. The three were left speechless. Somin, taking a closer look at the scene, commented to Yeonji that it looked like they were at a mass. This left Yeonji confused, but before Jin could repeat it, Hyun-ah lunged at her. There were only sounds of struggling on the other end of the line until Junah spoke to clarify what was happening. She explained to Yeonji that it was just a typical joke from Somin and that their interview had gone on a bit longer, but Somin had arrived at the most inconvenient moment. Jin, annoyed, expected June to remove his hand from her mouth, or else she'd give him a good punch. June, seeing the look on Somin's face, knew what she was thinking and had no choice but to hold her back, fearing what she might say. Suddenly, Somin blushed and began struggling to free herself from June, who thought she was suffocating. However, he soon realized that Somin was hurting herself with his chalice. When she got the chance, Somin kicked Jun in the calf, and he immediately let her go. Jun took the chance to ask where Yeonji had parked and if Jin was going with her after picking up her bag. When Somin turned to look at June, she found him writhing on the floor, still in pain from the kick. Somin, now calmer, demanded an explanation of what they were doing. Although both denied doing anything wrong, Somin insisted they finish whatever they were doing, as she was curious. Jun whispered to Junah, asking if she had any excuse for the situation. They tried saying they were exercising, but Junah knew that wouldn't work since Somin had seen them holding the Bible. They were trapped. Somin then asked why they were being so sneaky and told Junah to be more careful next time and lock the door. She also said she didn't understand why Junah would be praying with someone like June. Hearing this, Junah asked what Somin was implying, but he only replied that it was nothing. Somin said nothing more and bid them goodbye, mentioning that she would go with Yeonji, who was waiting for her. Before leaving, Junah asked what Somin planned to do with what she had seen. Somin was honest, saying she would let it slide this time, understanding it was a club matter for now. She left without further incident, much to their relief, as they had feared Somin would spill everything. Even so, Junah blamed June for what had happened, worrying that if Somin talked, everything would be ruined for her. Jun didn't see it that way, and reminded her that it was her idea to read the Bible. Junah instantly denied it, but June knew she had brought it up less than 10 minutes ago. Despite it all, Junah felt disheartened. At 25 years old, she had been caught nearly in the middle of a sermon, and she felt terrible about the situation. She wanted to know if June would still support them in the competition as he had promised. To him, it was just a local tournament in a computer lounge, so he saw no problem keeping his word. For Junah, having a challenger and a master on the team made things less worrisome. However, Jun was confused because he didn't know who had the master rank. Junah explained that it was Somin, their ace in the hole, as she could turn the game around at any moment. This left Jun stunned. He couldn't believe Somin was a master. Time passed, and the week of the competition arrived. In their first match, they won. All the girls were thrilled with their teamwork, although June didn't understand the excitement over just one game. Junah, despite wanting to kiss June, told him he had passed his initiation test. As expected, the blonde wanted to know where they would celebrate. Hun, on the other hand, couldn't stop wondering if all this was okay, especially since they had only beaten middle schoolers who were barely low or mid-tier players. When he heard they were celebrating their first victory, he was even more confused. Looking at the score, he wondered if this was really a gaming club. Moreover, he wanted to learn more about the master-ranked girl, who gave off a strange vibe with the way she played. That same night, they went to a nice place to eat. Everyone was very happy about their effort and enjoyed a good meal after the victory. Yeonji was delighted they had worked together despite their busy schedules and thanked Jun for being there. Dawn, for her part, admired how amazing Jun was since he had managed a solo kill and supported them when they grouped up. She wanted to know where he had learned to play like that, something Jun promised to share later. However, he was nervous and didn't know where to look when he was around Dawn. Meanwhile, Somin asked Dawn to leave June alone, saying they had only won once and it wasn't a big deal. She also joked that if June taught them how to play, they might end up as religious as Junah. This upset Junah, who knew Somin was teasing about a girl with a boyfriend. Though Somin was only joking, she noticed June was awkwardly observing Dawn's feelings. Somin thought maybe June was interested in Dawn, but Junah denied he was that kind of person. Impressed by Junah's defense of June, Somin grew suspicious that there might be something more between them and asked if they were dating. Junah denied it emphatically, but Somin knew they seemed very close despite having known each other for only a short time. Junah then threw a direct question at her. Would you go out with someone like him? Somin knew Junah had only tested him to see if he could join the club, but she also suspected there was something more behind it, especially given the other skills she had noticed in June, apart from gaming. June threatened Somin to stop talking nonsense, while Da tried to calm them down, reminding them they were there to celebrate. Somin complained that even though they had won, she didn't like having guests around. Junah, annoyed, reminded her that she was always playing tug of war and, since she was always live streaming, never practiced with them. Somin defended herself, saying that thanks to the donations she received, she could help fund the club, and Yeonji also contributed part of the money. The blonde insisted she wasn't a burden since she handled scheduling, reviewing, and organizing their participation in competitions. She also reminded them she was a master rank, and that every time they were in a competition, Somin always had an excuse for not giving her best. If she had tried harder, they wouldn't have had to call June. Despite Somin's provocations, a loud noise distracted the girls. It was Da, excited because June would help her improve her gameplay. Even though he hadn't agreed to anything, Da was already dreaming of learning to position better and farm correctly, something June would teach her patiently later. Junah decided to step outside to smoke while Yeonji went to the bathroom to talk to Somin. June noticed the atmosphere had become awkward. Then Da, smiling, asked him what he was doing. She was happy he was going to teach her how to play. At that moment, June remembered all the things he wanted to learn about his role as a support player and how he needed to focus on protecting the bottom lanes. Da told him to wait a moment because she had a question. Now that they were alone, she asked what kind of relationship he had with Junah. June didn't fully understand the question, but Da insisted on knowing if anything had happened between the two of them, even a small detail. June explained there was nothing between them, that Junah was just his Nuna. However, Da wasn't convinced and claimed there seemed to be something more between them. She had never seen anyone so close to Junah before, and began questioning what kind of relationship they really had, wondering if they might be something like friends with benefits. Then Da mentioned she already knew what was going on. Jun wondered in his mind if she had truly figured it out, but she asked if Junah was his unrequited love. The girl started laughing when she saw June's reaction, finding it adorable, though he knew she had misunderstood. Da, however, noticed his silence and said that confirmed everything, encouraging him not to give up. She added that she understood Junah's life was somewhat complicated. She knew that while Junah might seem a bit brusque on the outside, deep down she cared deeply for others. Da also reminded him of how Junah had defended him before, suggesting it was a sign of affection. Da thought that if Junah had a boyfriend, her personality might be calmer. Although she didn't know many details, she believed she had a good eye for judging people. She wanted to help June with his situation, but in exchange, he would have to help her improve her gameplay, proposing a win-win relationship. She asked if he thought it was a good deal. June wasn't entirely sure how the conversation had led there. Later, Somin approached Junah, who was apologizing for what had happened earlier. June asked if the two girls were okay, to which Yeonji replied it was normal for them to behave that way, since they fought every now and then. Yeonji assured him that Somin was a good person and that despite Junah's strong personality, she had a sensitive heart. However, she also confessed that she was worried because, lately, the arguments between them had become more frequent. Yeonji apologized to June for her teammates' behavior, though he wasn't surprised, considering it normal for things to get a little out of hand after a few drinks. What truly surprised him was that it was their first victory after forming a club. Just as Yeonji was about to explain more about it, Da interrupted because she had just received a call from her boyfriend, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. She apologized to Yeonji, saying she wouldn't be able to attend the planned second round since she hadn't told her boyfriend she was out with her friends. Despite their attempts to convince her to stay a bit longer, Da said her goodbyes, regretting not having had the chance to get to know June better. June noticed the girl's gaze before she left. Junah then asked if Da was leaving, and what would happen with the second round since the day was perfect for about 5 more rounds. As Da kept apologizing, Somin mentioned that Yeonji wouldn't stay all night either, as she wouldn't make the last train. In the end, both Yeonji and Da left, and Junah called them traitors for leaving them alone. That night, only 3 remained. Later, the girls were singing while Jun cheered them on with a tambourine. He wondered in his thoughts if these were the same girls who had been fighting earlier. Suddenly, Junah grabbed him and made him join their fun. Although he didn't want to, he tried to sing as best as he could. By 1:30 a.m., Jun was exhausted and couldn't understand how Junah, after 3 hours of karaoke, still had so much energy. He wondered if all women were like her, especially since he felt he was losing control with so much juice and needed to escape soon. To make matters worse, Somin saw him lying on the floor and commented that his stamina was terrible. Jun could only think about how he was a year older than her. He mentioned he was going to the bathroom and asked if she was okay, but when he called her by her name informally, she found it amusing. Somin asked if he was joking, reminding him that she had left her chalice very close to him on purpose, as if she were excited, and told him not to get the wrong idea or report it. She clarified that he was mistaken if he thought they had become close just because they went out to eat together, as she was only hanging out with them to please her Unnie. In reality, Somin confessed that she didn't like Jun much, and that if he started doing silly things in the club, she had ways to counter them. She advised him to be careful, which Jun interpreted as an overly harsh attitude. Later, Junah was carrying Jun in her arms, laughing at him for not being able to handle any juice. When Jun asked about Somin, Junah told him she had gone home before he noticed. By the time Jun wanted to leave, Junah insisted that he was too weak for not being able to handle a little juice, and that it wasn't manly. While Jun wondered what he had done wrong to end up like this, he felt his eyes fill with tears and lost consciousness. The last thing he thought was that he wanted to sleep for a while. When he regained consciousness, he saw Junah, who seemed very embarrassed. Not knowing what was happening, he heard Junah say she liked him. Jun didn't understand anything and asked what was going on. However, Junah seemed upset, mentioning that she had purified his soul, something he didn't fully understand. He asked what had happened, as he didn't remember anything. Junah, worried, thought she was talking to a different person. She remembered telling Jun not to lose consciousness as he needed to recover, even though he couldn't take it anymore. Junah asked for his home address to take him back, but Jun could barely speak as he was falling asleep. In his dreams, he mentioned his coach, recalling a match where he was the MVP, though his teammates said he played badly and the coach believed them. Junah didn't understand what he was saying, but decided to take him to a quiet town so he could rest, blaming herself for giving him so much juice. She thought all the chaos could have been avoided. Since she didn't have much money, renting a magical town wasn't the best option at the moment. Even so, she gave him good advice to recover and said he could pay later for the magical town. But when Jun saw she was leaving, he hugged her from behind and asked her not to go. This scared Junah, who quickly asked him to let her go because she was very embarrassed. However, Jun apologized, thinking she was still his coach and that he could do better. He explained he could perform the role of 3 or more people, but begged her not to leave him behind, because he wanted to be a professional. He asked for another chance, but Junah didn't understand what he meant. Despite that, she hugged him, because she realized he had suddenly become emotional. Although she wanted to tell him to shut up, she understood that he didn't know all the details of her training. Still, she wondered why he kept dragging his feet, even if his life had been a failure. For Junah, it was also the first time she had consoled someone. Suddenly, she asked Jun why he was acting so strangely. His actions embarrassed her, but Jun told her that every time he saw her, he found her more beautiful. It was at that moment that Jun kissed her, noting that her personality now seemed rougher and more masculine. Then Jun took out the Bible and began reading a few pages with her. Jun felt that the Word of God purified his sins in a deeper way than the first time they prayed. Jun asked the girl to tell him that she liked him, but when she refused, he intensified his prayers with greater faith, not understanding why she didn't like him. Junah kept observing how he could truly act like a man when he was close to God, though she asked him not to try purifying her soul. Finally, she confessed that she did like him. That was when Jun used holy water. Returning to the present, Jun remembered everything that had happened and felt like a complete fool. He apologized to Junah, wanting to do something to make up for his mistake, but she simply said she wanted to keep praying. At first, he didn't understand what she meant, but noticing her blushing face, he asked what she was doing. She explained that while she couldn't stop him from purifying his soul, now it was her turn to follow God's path, and this time, she would enjoy the Mass. Before they began to pray again, Jun wanted to ask Junah a question. Remembering everything that had happened, he wanted to know if she truly liked him or if she had just said it to calm him down. Junah gave him a few light taps, saying she had only mentioned it to stop him from bothering her because she had seen him dizzy from drinking too much juice. What she couldn't forgive was that he had used holy water on her soul, and because of that, they would continue with the Mass until the end. She told him to stop asking silly questions and to start reading the Bible, So the two continued preaching God's word while feeling a slight mutual attraction. After a small kiss, Jun regretted having forced her into having a mass, promising it wouldn't happen again in the future. But Junah headbutted him, wondering what future he was referring to, as this was going to be his last mass. However, since she had paid for the magical town, she decided to enjoy every paragraph of the Bible, which echoed in Jun's mind. They continued their prayers until 3 a.m., almost reaching 7. After finishing, they bathed together, continuing to pray for everyone's good health. Jun commented that he had only joined the club to pray with her, something she denied, but Junah didn't mind, as she liked praying by his side. As they left the magical town, reality hit them again. Hyun tried to apologize for purifying her soul with holy water, but Jun was more focused on making some calculations for the upcoming dates, given that they had prayed more than 8 times. Not knowing what else to do, he suggested bringing incense next time for greater protection and keeping some on hand. This intrigued Jun, especially because she mentioned next time, which made Junah blush and immediately shut him up with a kick. She scolded him to stop talking nonsense and prepare for the next game, since if they lost, he wouldn't get to try the cake she had prepared for him. She said goodbye to Jun, and he could only think about how she always ended up hitting him. However, Junah stopped, called out to him, and with a smile asked if they would see each other again. Blushing, Jun assured her that they would. That same morning, Jun was pale, his energy at its lowest due to everything that had happened before. He had completely forgotten that he had school that day. He wondered if that's what going to university without doing anything felt like. Though he wanted to go home as soon as classes ended, he had no choice but to endure. At that moment, he received a call from Yoongi. When he answered, he felt a little confused, but the girl just wanted to know if he had made it home safely, especially since she knew he and Somin had had misunderstandings. She apologized for not accompanying them, but Jun told her not to worry, saying it had actually been fun. Then Yeonji asked if he would be busy later, as she had something urgent to tell him and wanted to know if he had time. Since Jun was working on something at the moment, she asked him to go to the club first, to which he agreed. Yeonji said she would arrive when she finished, and they said goodbye. After hanging up, Jun was left puzzled, unsure of what the girl wanted to talk about. When he arrived at the club room, Jun opened the door, and to his bad luck, the only person there was Somin, just the one he least wanted to see. The situation was very awkward for him, as being alone with her felt strange. He thought about leaving but remembered he had made a promise, so he decided to stay. Even though he still felt uncomfortable, he knew Somin treated him like a complete stranger, not even looking at him. Jun wondered if he should try talking to her, but when he did, Somin silenced him, saying she didn't want to hear him. She mentioned that every time she heard him speak, it made her feel like vomiting. This enraged Jun even more, cursing the situation. He saw her as someone reserved and easy to get along with, especially since she was younger than him, and couldn't understand why she insulted him or treated him so rudely. At the same time, Jun couldn't help but notice how cute she was, and Somin realized he was looking at her. Jun hurried to clarify that he wasn't doing anything inappropriate, but Somin continued insulting him, calling him an insect. She asked if he wanted to ruin everything by looking at her that way. Jun tried to explain, saying it was all a misunderstanding, but she didn't believe him, especially since she knew he had been praying with Junah the day before. Confused, Jun asked how she knew that, to which Somin responded that if he didn't want to be found out, he should have changed his clothes. Somin accused him of being just like other guys who pretended to be innocent to get close to girls, but showed their true intentions when things got tough. She was convinced he only wanted to pray with a girl from the club, which is why she treated him like an insect. To her, Jun was snooping around to get closer to the girls, and she wasn't going to allow it. Jun, understanding what she thought, tried to defend himself, saying he was there at Yeonji's request. However, Somin knew that even before joining the club, he had already prayed with Junah and suspected that wasn't enough for him. Now she understood why he had been staring at her so intently. Jun tried to explain, saying he was looking in another direction, but Somin noticed that his gaze was far too focused. Finally, she confronted him, asking if he was trying to get closer to her with the intention of having a mass together later. And with that, we close the first part of this Manhwa. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share it with your friends.